Welcome back to another ranking video for Risk of Rain 2. It's been a hot minute since we've done one of these, and I've held off on this video for a while since I imagine it's going to be a bit contentious as most of my rankings seem to be. Today, we'll be ranking each Risk of Rain survivor among three different metrics: appearance and character design, general power level, and how much fun I have playing them. These will all be measured to see which survivor will truly come out on top. Now, this obviously is mostly my opinion. Every time I attempt to take a stance on the power of certain items or survivors, the comments seem to eat me alive for the greatest sin of being wrong. Because of this, I have to remind you again that this is mostly my opinion, and while I have just over 800 hours of gameplay to back it up, it is still just an opinion, and should be treated as such. I encourage you to comment down below how you feel about my rankings, or rankings of your own. But please, remember that it's just a game, and it costs nothing to be nice. Without further ado and fluff, enjoy the video. Last place had to be someone, and that someone is Commando. I feel bad for placing him here, but at the same time, is anyone really surprised? He is generally the most hated character in the game, as he really isn't very good. His weapons having damage fall off is unnecessary, and despite having different ability options, he feels about the same every time. His design is generic, though there are some points to be given for him being pretty iconic. Other than that though, there really isn't a lot going for him. I personally find him pretty fun, but that's mostly out of his mindless brain-off playstyle. 1.6 average is honestly as good as he's going to get. Next is Captain, with an average score of 2. I find this design very generic, and while I like the arm gun, I can't not think of General Ironwood from Ruby, which is a reference only I care about, I think. Because of this, I constantly get disappointed by his kind of lame and generic appearance. He is alright in the performance department, allowing for early head starts with his beacons and an amazing passive, but not being able to use two of his abilities in Hidden Realms really holds him back in my eyes. He's just not that good, to be honest, but I still appreciate his place in the roster. Up next is Rex, who I honestly expected to be last on this list. I find it incredibly clunky and awkward to play as, especially with its awful movement abilities, if you can even call them that. However, I can't deny its performance and uncanny ability to dish out damage and heal at the same time. Its design is fine, but is ultimately just a plant in a pot with legs, which you'd think would be cool, but actually feels relatively bland in my opinion. Third place is where it'll stay for now, until I inevitably go on a random Rex hyperfixation for a week and he's all you see in my videos. 11th is going to Bandito Dorito, who I've had a turbulent relationship with. They look awesome, and I think their mastery skin is sick as hell, but at the same time, only rivaled with Rex, they have one of the most clunky feels to them, if that makes sense. The reloading feels awkward, the dash is weird, and while the animation for the Desperado attack is neat, it still feels slow and a bit meh to use. They're pretty strong, but due to my distaste of their playstyle, they're lucky they weren't lower. Top 10 begins with Engineer. I want Engineer to be so much higher on this list, but because of his lack of movement and his reliance on his turrets, he isn't super good in terms of power level. His appearance always seemed goofy to me, the grenade launchers above him especially making him look comically top-heavy and oblong. I have a lot of fun playing him, and the creativity in the builds you can try with his various turrets are super fun to play with, for me, so I suppose that's what he's got going for him. Again, I wish I could put him higher, but he's kinda lame and isn't very good compared to everyone else, so 10th place it is. 9th place goes to Railgunner. Railgunner has the opposite stats of Engineer in a way. I don't like playing as her, as the scope causes motion sickness, and her movement ability is awkward and unreliable. Her general performance is a similar story, being very middle of the road. She can pump out damage like no one's business, but her ability to get overwhelmed so easily is an issue for me. The score that gets her all the way up to 9th is her appearance. We love cool-ass women on this channel, and this woman is sick as fuck, alright? I love her hooded biker suit she wears, and while the backpack is a little silly, her gun brings up the score by like 50% alone. If I had a figure like this and also a lot of money, I would absolutely cosplay her, because she's just so cool. I'll stop fawning over the character design and move on already. We have 8 more survivors to get through, and my hands are already getting tired from typing this script. Next up is another strong woman. However, I can't say what I said about Railgunner here. Loader is cool, and I think the character design is pretty neat. I appreciate that the devs didn't make the warehouse worker in a load-bearing exoskeleton a man. I think that there's a fair amount of memorability in the design because of that. However, it's kind of bland. There's not much more to say about it than that, and it feels bad to say, but the combination of that and the fact that her mastery skin looks like she has a weird bowl cut is a bit disappointing to me. She's decently strong, and very fun to play though, so I'm alright with placing her in 8th. If this were 2019, she for sure would have been in 1st place, as I used to main her. Next up, with an average score of 3, is our favorite little machine guy, MUL-T. MUL-T's appearance isn't much to call home about, and his performance is about as middle of the road as it gets. What got him to climb up to 7th place is his fun factor. No other character feels as different between loadouts as he does, and I think that it's really cool how the devs handled the character. You can either be a sniper or a melee character, or both whenever you want to. It's so cool, and I love how silly he feels to play, not to mention the fun that comes from bouncing off enemies with his transport mode. Just barely not making it into the top 5 is the survivor you likely didn't even expect to be on this list. That being Heretic. Heretic is a silly little creature. I like their design a whole lot, especially their head design. The thing that holds them back for me is their mediocre power and clunkiness in their playstyle. Visions is a bit unresponsive and unsatisfying to use. Hooks is difficult to use and fairly unrewarding. Strides is restrictive in that you can't cancel it, and I have nothing bad to say about Essence of Ruin. Their passive isn't super creative, and I'd prefer if they had free flight to a height limit or something. A triple jump is just a bit lame. Still though, the fact that you have to find Heretic by getting the 4 heresy items instead of just picking her at the selection screen is super cool, so 6th place is fairly generous. Top 5 has arrived, and before we read off who received it, I gotta ask you to subscribe. You watched this far into the video, so I think it's safe to say I earned it. Or maybe you're hate watching, and cooking up the most devious hate comment once you find I didn't put your favorite character in 1st or something. I don't know. Anyways, next up is Mercenary. Mercenary's design may be a bit generic, but the fact he has the prisoner skin is what helps him out the most. He's a lot of fun to play, though a bit clunky at times, and is generally a pretty good survivor if you want to learn the game. His movement is unmatched, and his special abilities feel super fun to use. I don't have a lot to say about him, to be honest. He had one of the biggest changes in my eyes, in terms of grading though. When I started playing, I hated this dude. Now that I have a solid grasp on the game and his playstyle, I find that he's a lot of fun. Next is Huntress, my original main and one of the only 2 characters I have beaten Eclipse 8 on, the other being Commando. Huntress to me is the perfect concoction of speed and damage. I'm not usually a huge fan of fast characters that do pathetic damage, but Huntress avoids this by having her weakness be her health instead. I love the feeling of whizzing around the map and sniping enemies from across it. I love the feeling of dodging an attack last second with a blink, and I love the feeling of seeing your glaive bounce off 50 enemies and wipe up the whole map with a single press of a button. Huntress may very well be one of the strongest characters, and if you're just starting out, I can't recommend that you play her enough. Our final podium's lowest step is inhabited by Artificer, one of my favorite characters by far. I don't know what it is, but burning every enemy to death with a couple ignition tanks after sniping them with an ion bomb from the moon feels so good. She has slowly become my go-to character in terms of basic challenge videos, as she's kind of who I feel most comfortable on. Only subtracted points are for her performance, as she is outclassed by one other character in my eyes, but her damage is ridiculous, and she's got great movement to boot. Her design is really neat, as she fits her namesake perfectly, feeling magical but not too out of the realm of the game's theme at the same time. 3rd place is a bit disappointing, honestly, as I expected her to place higher, but I can accept this. I understand she isn't everyone's favorite. Silver medal goes to Void Fiend. I'm honestly not super thrilled with him being as high as he ended up being. It's like he's so good that it feels bad to like him, if it makes sense. His character design is sick, he's super fun to play, and he's genuinely so overpowered it hurts. There's nothing else to say about him, he's just that good. If you aren't playing him, then you're honestly missing out. His power is completely uncontested, and that's just how it is. And finally, first place, gold medal, and the goodestest boy is Acrid. The devs had to know what they were doing when they were creating this adorable jelly doggo and simultaneously making him one of the strongest characters in the game. His character design is nothing special. Dog, but pink. But there is a beauty in its simplicity. His poison passive makes him uniquely overpowered, as it allows him to be the only character in the game that has the ability to beat the Multitude's 100 challenge. Sure, he is restricted to melee, but the epidemic ability and his spit avoid this perfectly. On top of all that, he's just fun to play. And I think it all comes down to his jump, really. It feels super dynamic and fun, the way you bounce around the map, and it works as a great escape tool. It feels a bit funny to me because I ranked him fairly low in my Survivor tier list from a while back, as I wasn't super used to him yet. But since I played Multitudes 100, I have a renowned appreciation for him and his playstyle that I will forever cherish. Anyways, that's all for today. Let me know how you felt about my rankings in the comments below, and if you like the video, you should totally subscribe, as it took me a lot of time and work to make this video and the stills within it. Thanks a ton to our YouTube members, who have access to their own special playlist of content, including the full playthrough of Subnautica Below Zero, GTA 5, and other exclusive members-only vids. And thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.